Welcome to Now in the 90s, where we look at the game releases of 30 years ago today. This week, an overlooked Super Scope game, a Sega CD port, and the 16-bit evolution that we all hoped for. Hi, I'm your host Jared, and today is January 5th, 1994. How do you reinvent the wheel? When people are already expecting greatness, surpassing that gets even harder. To really wow the same audience, you have to bring something special. You gotta hit them with that X Factor. Released in January 1994 for the Super Nintendo, was Mega Man X.
Dr. Light developed X, the first thinking, decision-making robot. Now, X must hunt down Sigma using his all-new arsenal, including the X-Buster and the awesome emergency acceleration system. Fight the mega battle of the next century in Mega Man X from Capcom.
Mega Man X is a side-scrolling action platformer. Play as X as you run, jump, and shoot everything that comes your way. All new abilities include X being able to slide down walls and jump up them, and find some big mechs that he can pilot himself. He can also upgrade his maximum life bar to getting hidden armor pieces for new powers. This lets him dash for even faster speed and platforming abilities, charging up his X-Buster to a 3rd level, and being able to charge up every single boss weapon he's acquired. Take down the 8 robots that have gone Maverick, and take down the evil Sigma for real, definitely. Mega Man X was developed and published by Capcom. Production of it began as a means to elevate the Mega Man franchise to the 16-bit era and charge it up with new graphics, faster and better gameplay, and a more sophisticated story. Flashback to January 1993. Electronic Gaming Monthly issue 43 hits your doorstep, and under the gossip and rumors section, there's talk of an upcoming Super Mega Man. It's the first anyone has heard of it, and not knowing anything, everyone presumed it to be like the same old Mega Man we all knew. Then, EGM issue 48 comes in June, letting you know that Super Mega Man is now known as Mega Man X, taking place way further in the future. Then comes the Summer Consumer Electronics Show of 1993, where Mega Man X is debuted at the public for the first time. Early screenshots of this preview build made the rounds of all the media outlets, showing some interesting early stages. Backgrounds are way different, enemies are doing different attacks, and some are in completely different levels than normal. GamePro TV also got footage of this early build.
Super Nintendo's new Mega Man X is the mega masterpiece we've all been waiting for. Your new adversaries are more diabolical than ever. Luckily, the X-Man's arsenal is now stoked to the boiling point. You can bet there'll be plenty more Mega Man X sequels to come.
Then the previews really started rolling out for the next few months. EGM got more, Nintendo Power had some, GamePro also got a few articles. Also, what is that artwork? Is this early X, or is it supposed to be X with all of his armor upgrades? What is this? Any X fans know better than I that could figure this out? Then, of course, the biggest coverage would come with the January 1994 issues of both Electronic Gaming Monthly and Nintendo Power. Both gave massive, multi-page previews covering the whole game. It was also the cover for Nintendo Power. Of course, the biggest reveal that any gaming magazine gave us was the reveal of one super hidden secret ability that X can get. After getting every single upgrade in the game and doing some stage replaying, X can acquire the Hadouken Fireball from Dr. Light, dressed up like Ryu from Street Fighter 2. The Hadouken can only be used at full energy, and one hit kills everything in the game. And you do it by pressing a quarter circle forward and pressing fire. These days, Mega Man X is considered to be one of the best Super Nintendo games of all time. How did it review when it came out, though? Also super well. EGM awarded it 9 out of 10 with the Editor's Choice Platinum Award. GamePro averaged a 4.75 out of 5, and in a shocking twist, Nintendo Power was the lowest with an average score of a 3.9 out of 5. To give comparison for that, that's a slightly lower score than what they gave Winter Extreme Skiing and Snowboarding. It was an immediate hit. Mega Man X would go on to sell well over 1 million copies, getting several sequels and its own spin-offs, becoming a sub-series of the entire Mega Man franchise. It would also get a PC port. X would appear in a single episode of the Mega Man cartoon, which debuts later in 1994, and there would be some limited edition Mega Man X Pogs. It would get an honestly excellent full-on remake for the PSP titled Maverick Hunter X. And if you want to play the original Mega Man X today, you can. through the Mega Man X Legacy Collection. When new hardware lacks releases, there's always the best backup plan: ports. Released at the very end of December 1993 for the Sega CD, was Microcosm. Microcosm is a shoot-'em-up with a behind-the-back viewpoint. Tiny nanomachine robots are taking over the company's president to control his mind, fly through his body, and shoot everything that comes your way. Swap between different weapons to use, and in some levels, swap out to new vehicles entirely. Fight a boss at the end of the stages, save the Cybertech president's brain, and of course, enjoy all of the glorious FMVs. Microcosm was developed and published by Psygnosis. It was originally made for the Japanese FM Towns Marty, a console PC basically, in 1993 until it got ported to the Sega CD and eventually the 3DO. There is a major difference though. The original version all took place in first-person cockpit view, whereas the Sega CD changed you to the ship moving around on the screen. The background is still entirely FMV as you fly through the human body's many fleshy pipes and tubes. Yeah, the plot of the game is basically that one episode of The Magic School Bus. Because of the new third-person perspective though, it's possible for the ship to fly through the walls. You don't take any damage or anything, but it's a funny oddity because of the port. The game also begins with several minutes of live-action FMV sequences that sets up way too elaborate of a plot that's just for a shoot-'em-up. The acting is just as stupid as you would hope, as they were primarily played by the development staff. Although, one of them was Paul Franklin, who would go on to be an Oscar-winning video effects artist, working on movies like Inception and Interstellar. Also, can I personally say, I think the Sega CD music kind of slaps. In fact, Dylan, can I get one of those hidden jam alerts?
Hidden jam alert!
Thank you. Microcosm on Sega CD, y'all. Give it a listen. Of course, it's a game about the human body, and it was the 90s, so the magazine advertisement for Microcosm had to make a butthole joke. Actual reviews of the game were not thrilled. EGM gave it middling scores, finding the actual gameplay to be repetitive and boring. Microcosm wasn't exactly a big seller or anything, however, it was important. It's what got Psygnosis to catch the eye of Sony, who wanted to buy the studio so they could develop for their upcoming secret project, the PlayStation. If you wanted to play Microcosm today, as far as we can tell, it has not received any kind of a modern port. Find it and boot it up on your Sega CD or 3DO. Nintendo also didn't want you to forget they had accessories and add-ons too. Released just before January 1994 was Metal Combat: Falcon's Revenge for the Super Nintendo. Metal Combat is a light gun game. Lock in your super scope and blast away all kinds of oversized robots. Every single level is basically a boss fight, you versus big mechs. There are 2 playable characters, and you can charge your shot for a bigger hit. Take down every single enemy, but do it quickly, as you can get one of 2 different endings depending on how well you do. Metal Combat was published by Nintendo and developed by Intelligent Systems, who you may know best for working on games like Duck Hunt, Paper Mario, Advance Wars, and the Fire Emblem series. Metal Combat is also a sequel to the previous Super Scope game, Battle Clash. It continues the story and has the same protagonist, Mike Anderson. Only, do they need to go this hard on it? Like, damn, these graphics are amazing. Every boss is massive and it makes it easy to find their weak points. It's one of the most visually impressive SNES games that nobody ever talks about. And nobody ever talks about the 2-player mode. Metal Combat has a versus mode where player 1 uses the Super Scope at the screen, while player 2 uses a controller to play as the enemy on screen, moving them around and using one of 4 different attacks. It's basically the same way it was in Duck Hunt. Also, did you know that player 2 can control the ducks in Duck Hunt? Despite getting way more effort than it really needed, Nintendo didn't exactly market Metal Combat all that much. The Super Scope was already fizzling out by this time. Nintendo Power issue 55 did a Super Scope roundup section where it gave Metal Combat a brief overview next to several other compatible titles. For those who did have a Super Scope though, the game reviewed pretty well. Nintendo Power scored it an average of a 3.5 out of 5. GamePro magazine was a bit higher than that, and EGM's average score was a 7.75 out of 10 with some high individual scores. They loved the 2-player mode and the graphics, even if a light gun shooter can get stale. Metal Combat, like all of the Super Scope games, didn't really go on to make much of an impact. Because of the nature of it, it's also never been ported or re-released onto anything else. Though, if you have a working Super Scope and a CRT TV, it's one worth trying out on your Super Nintendo. And bringing in the new year with everything else released this week, here's Editor Dylan.
Lethal Enforcers released on the SNES this week, and I'm fairly certain it's the worst version so far. And since the gameplay footage is nothing but constant bright flashes, I'll just say watch our coverage of a better version in our July 28th, 1993 episode. Shoplifter 3 for the SNES is not a sequel to a game about a shoplifting kung fu master. It's a sequel to a game I only played as a kid on the Master System, which, despite what the media would have you believe, is an actual console that existed in the US. We just never got a few obscure games like Land of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, Lucky Dime Caper starring Donald Duck, Master of Darkness, Ninja Gaiden, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Chaos, and Spinball. You know, all the ones nobody's heard of. Did everyone pick up on that? But among the few games we did get, I remember Choplifter being a simple but fun arcade helicopter shoot-'em-up of sorts, with an emphasis on rescuing little dudes on the ground by picking them up and dropping them off back at the base. Choplifter 3 is still that, only Super. And Nintendo. It's basically 2D flying Crazy Taxi. And hey, 2 games into the new year without a sports game? That's gotta be some kind of record. Brett Hull Hockey for the SNES is a hockey game starring, you guessed it, Al Michaels, who thankfully chimes in from time to time, letting me know exactly what's going on. Honestly, I still have no idea what's going on. I'm just hitting buttons and hoping for the best, which is also the same tactic I used for Riddick Bowe Boxing for the SNES. The first boxing game I know of that features jiggle physics, unless you count Von Kaiser from Punch-Out. He's a head jiggling fiend. The jiggles actually have a purpose. They indicate the corresponding body part that is hit. Body jiggles for body blows, and head jiggles for head blows. What's your excuse, Vaughn? I had fun with it, and if I put enough time into it, I'd bet I'd be able to appreciate the nuanced mechanics. It's also for the Game Boy, with 2 less face buttons to mash, and I still haven't gotten any better. Maybe I'll get back to it eventually, but we have one more game to talk about this week. Chase HQ for the Game Boy is a very stripped-down, bare-bones port of the arcade classic. It's far too basic to really capture the intensity of its arcade counterpart, but the real crime is that Chase HQ had a sequel called Special Criminal Investigation because it's criminally underrated. It had a wheel, a pedal, and a gun type thing. And it was awesome. And what made it so fun and memorable to me was that I was always on the gun, shooting the bad guys in the cars while my brother was on the wheel because I suck at driving. Still do. It's a shame that Chase HQ didn't continue with this direction because it would have set it apart from the mountain of racers at the time that all started blending together. I love this premise, and nobody ever sticks with it. It's always a one and done. But hey, 9 games came out on these consoles this week in 1994. Let me know if there's any other games like Special Criminal Investigation. Not like GTA where it lets you drive while shooting. I'm talking full-blown racing game with a gun. Until then, hey, it's good to see you here in 1994, and hopefully I'll see you next week as well. Take it easy.
And thank you, Dylan. Here in the Collector's Corner, Mega Man X sold a ton of copies, but it's also sought after. It released with a retail price of $59.99, and now the game alone goes for $28. Thankfully cooling off from its $40 price tag from the last couple of years. If you've got it with the box and manual though, it's still worth $130. Microcosm's value is microscopic. It's easy to find the Sega CD version for only $10, and it's only $18 for a complete one. Metal Combat was priced at $49.99 when it released. Now, you can find the game in the bargain bin at about $9, and only needing about $30 for a complete in-box copy. And that's it for today. Welcome to 1994, y'all! There's some absolute bangers coming this year. Next week, a mascot from the nth dimension, the X-Men, and a game I've never heard of before. I'm your host, Jared, and this was Now in the 90s. Thank you so much for watching Now in the 90s. I know we had that scare with the channel suddenly getting demonetized for like no reason a couple of weeks back, but I want to let you guys know our appeal was successful. The channel is remonetized, and thank you everyone for your support during all of that. A lot of people signed up for our Patreon during those times, and that really meant a lot to all of us. Which, speaking of, I want to thank some of those patrons like BJ Kmeyer, Kevin Gallagher, and Ethan Gauthier. Please like the video and leave a comment down below, especially if you played any of the games we mentioned this week. I know you played Mega Man X, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you are a subscriber, thank you so much for watching this show. Every single Friday, I can actually tell you exactly where the very first time I saw Mega Man X. I was at my local video rental store, Muntz Movie Land, just checking out the Super Nintendo section. I saw Mega Man X, ripped it off the shelf, and I looked at it and I said, Mega Man 10? Shoutouts to Kid Me for knowing his Roman numerals.